Dr. Trish Leigh. In this workshop, let's talk about sleep issues. So here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to talk about the sleep cycle and how your brain moves through the sleep cycle when it's working well. Then we're going to talk about QEEG brain mapping and how you can use brain mapping to assess a brain pattern that is at risk for sleep issues. I'm going to show you what that brain map looks like. Then we're going to talk about scientifically proven neurofeedback protocols and then how you can see progress using neurofeedback to adjust a brain pattern from the one that causes sleep issues, proven by science, to the more optimal pattern that will help a person get better sleep. Lastly, I'm going to give you tips that you can share with your clients or your patients so that they can use strategies to use both sides of the street, as I always talk about, in the end, so that as you shift their brain into a better pattern, they have tools to keep that progress going. Okay, so let's dig in. Okay, first, please take 2 minutes to watch this video because it will explain to you how a brain moves through the sleep cycle using really fun and cool graphics that make it easy to explain. And once you get done watching this video, we'll move to the next slide, which I'm just going to move right on to. And I will explain a little bit more about what happens when the sleep cycle is disrupted by the brain pattern that creates sleep issues. Okay, so just a 1 second recap because you will have watched the video. I want to remind you how the sleep cycle works, but point out the brainwave specifically. So on this graph, we are looking at a brain that is awake, a person who is awake, that then moves through stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 of non-REM sleep, and then into REM sleep. And as you know from the video, the brain goes through this cycle 4 to 5 times a night on average, and not all REM cycles are created equally, and we'll look at that again in another slide. But as you move through the sleep cycle, your brain goes from higher to lower levels of consciousness. And that consciousness is associated with how tight the brain waves are that are being used. So here, when you're awake, your brain is more in low beta, and then alpha as it slows down. And in stage 1, your brain is increasing the use of theta. So there's higher amplitude of the waves, and they're basically looser and wider, not as tight, which means that the electrical energy has slowed down. Then in the next stage, the sleep spindles kick into gear, and you're still getting into lower levels of consciousness, but the sleep spindles are kicking in to move you into stages 3 and 4 of slow wave sleep. And this is delta, really slow brain speed. Then the brain goes into REM. And so basically, if a person is using too much high beta and not enough alpha, as they move into this cycle, their brain won't be able to slow down enough to be able to move into theta well, create the sleep spindles well, move into delta and stay there, and then be able to get into REM. And what usually happens is here during this stage 2, when the brain is creating these sleep spindles, that the brain will catch on to faster brain speed and will then catch a thought, and the person will wake up in between one of those 4 to 5 cycles. And we're going to look at that in a minute. But what causes sleep problems is what I just told you. So what generally causes sleep problems is not totally what is happening during the sleep cycle, but what is happening around the clock. So this study and many others show that the neurophysiological aspects of sleeplessness are a central nervous system that is in a hyper-aroused state around the clock. And that is a person who's using too much high beta and not enough alpha in terms of brain waves. So that a person who's stressed out, who has more anxiety, who's in overdrive or go, go, go mode is using more high beta in the day. And if you've heard me talk before, you know I'm always telling people they need to take breaks during their day to let that high beta come down so that they can change the trajectory of that increase across the day. So what happens is that use of high beta in the day disrupts the circadian rhythms of the brain on the 24-hour cycle. So the brain's going so fast in the day, it doesn't have enough time or capacity to come down and to go slow enough to get into the sleep cycle and stay there. So many people fall asleep though. So people with sleep problems can pass right out. They fall right asleep. And sometimes that's because they have alcohol to drink, and alcohol will help you fall asleep, but it disrupts the sleep cycle later on. And a lot of people with high beta use alcohol as an evening elixir to coax their brain into sleep. And many people who have too much high beta and are in chronic central nervous system hyperarousal have hypervigilance throughout the day. So they're always on the look for what needs to be done. But what that does is it creates just that fastness throughout the day, which then impacts the sleep cycle at night. Disrupted circadian rhythms. So that's correlated with somatic and cognitive hyperarousal too. So that will be physical tension, someone who's using their body a lot, someone who moves around a lot. Cognitive hyperarousal is someone who thinks all the time or who has mental obsessions, as sometimes people call it. So the key to fixing sleep problems is bringing the energy in the brain down overall throughout the day so that that person can shift into sleep at night. Okay, so what would the brain map look like? A brain map of a person who struggles with sleep issues or sleep challenges, insomnia, a person who can't fall asleep. And what I was going to say on the last slide is that a person who can't fall asleep is likely in a dream, or who does fall asleep but can't stay asleep is likely in adrenal fatigue. So their system's just so exhausted that when their head hits the pillow, they're out. But then it can't catch on and move itself. The brain can't move itself through the sleep cycle. Okay, so this is the brain map that is correlated with sleep problems scientifically. What we see here is we're looking at absolute power and relative power. And absolute power is how charged up a brain is with any given speed. Relative power is which speed is being used the most, which speed is being used the least relative to the other speeds. So in this brain map, you can see that absolutely and relatively, this brain is using too much high beta, extra fast brain speed. So that's what we've got going on here. Too much high beta. This brain is cranking away, especially in the frontal lobe. And we know the frontal lobe here is associated, especially here in the middle, with the anterior cingulate gyrus. That's a hamster on the wheel. We know it's associated with that. So this brain's using much too much high beta. At the same time, relatively speaking, it is not using enough alpha speed to help it feel calm and relaxed. And it's not using enough delta. And we know delta is important within the sleep cycle. It's the slow wave component of the sleep cycle. So in the relative sense, it doesn't have the capacity to get into delta during the sleep cycle because it's so stuck in high beta. So hopefully you understand how this brain map can impact sleep. Okay, now neurofeedback protocols to improve sleep, and these are proven by science. I'm going to show you on the next 2 slides, is that enhancing SMR, sensory motor rhythm. So that's that perfect, in air quotes, perfect processing speed in the middle. We want to increase the use of that calm focus speed that's in the 12 hertz range. You can also enhance low beta, which is very similar to sensory motor rhythm, but it's just a tad different in its spindle structure. And it sometimes is a little bit faster. And then there's a new study that I'll show you too that shows that increasing faster alpha, which again is pretty close to SMR, and decreasing high beta, so balancing out that alpha to high beta ratio, which we saw on the map is absolutely something that's necessary for most people. Balancing out that higher, faster alpha, which is like SMR or low beta, and bringing down high beta, balancing out that ratio can really help a person feel and perform better during the day, and then especially get a better night's sleep at night. So recommended sites for the neurofeedback protocols to improve sleep, always based on evaluation. So what I'm going to share with you next is based on the 2 studies that I'm going to show you in the next slides, but I always evaluate every brain that I'm working with because then I know exactly what that brain needs. So doing a full QEEG brain map is obviously the best and most comprehensive way to know what a brain needs overall. But you can also use EEG to get baselines at different areas to be able to assess which has the highest high beta, which has lower alpha or SMR, and then increase alpha, low beta or SMR, and decrease that high beta. But sites that have been shown through science to really be effective for improving sleep are mostly here in the front left area of the brain, the frontal lobe here. So FP1, the prefrontal cortex on the left side, F4, C4, and then sometimes if the whole brain is using much too much high beta and not enough alpha, just going with an SMR up at CZ can be very powerful for a person. Now, this newly suggested protocol, but there's not a ton of research suggesting it or supporting it, is back at P4, balancing that alpha to high beta ratio. But clearly, if you do a brain map and you see that on your particular client's brain, F4 is the most dysregulated, you go there. P4 is the most dysregulated, you go there. But the point is you want to increase the medium speeds for calm focus and decrease high beta, which is going to create hyperarousal and hypervigilance in the brain. Okay, so here's the proven protocols. In this study, a neurofeedback protocol to improve mild anxiety and sleep quality, and I just gave you the protocols based upon that, but now you have the studies, and enhancing sleep quality and memory in insomnia using sensory motor rhythm conditioning. And why is memory and anxiety associated with improving sleep? Because of what we just talked about. Not enough alpha, too much high beta is going to make it so that the person feels anxious, and then their brain is kind of cranking too fast that memories can't make their way from working memory to short-term memory to long-term memory. So as we improve the processing speed of the brain, we're also improving anxiety and memory. So check those studies out because you'll really like them. Okay, let's look at trend graphs for neurofeedback and what the first trend graph might look like for someone who has sleep issues and what a later, more regulated trend screen might look like for someone who has had neurofeedback to improve their sleep issue brain map. So here you can clearly see, and this is actually the right side that we see here with the dashed line, but here you can see this yellow line is high beta, as is this yellow solid line. The red lines are low beta. So this brain is just cranking fast, using much too much high beta. At the same time, the blue lines are alpha, so it means the brain is using mostly extra fast speed and not enough alpha. Alpha on these graphs, and hopefully if you're a neurofeedback practitioner, you know where they're supposed to be. But if not, alpha is supposed to be higher than mid and low beta. So the way we want to see this graph in particular stacked is black, and actually down here is a good reference for you, but we want to see it black, green, light blue, red, and yellow. And that is a regulated pattern. And so basically this is a flip-flop pattern that is using too much high beta. So, and this is the first session, and this is the 30th session. So over 30 sessions, there's a decrease in high beta, and you can see the decrease within the session. So here it starts up at 16, and at the end of the session, and actually at the lowest point in the session, it's at 8 or about 9 where it should be. That's the regulated version of high beta. Then over time, you can see here we have high beta. Oh, high beta shouldn't be at 8. Sorry, alpha should be up at 8. High beta should be down here in the 4 range. So here you can see that we have this decrease of the energy overall, and we have alpha higher than high beta and mid beta at this last session, and we have peaks of alpha over and a much more regulated pattern with high beta much lower and alpha trying to increase itself over the 2. So hopefully you can see the difference. The main difference is too much yellow, not enough blue, improved blue, decreased yellow. Okay, so this is a chart of how sleep changes with age. So depending upon the person that you're working with, they should spend more to less time in each of these cycles. So just so you know, thinking about brains, you know that brains change over the lifespan, and the values of delta and theta and alpha, low beta and high beta can change over the lifespan. And that's why we use a database. Sleep cycles change too. And so what we see here is on average, it's going to take longer to fall asleep as a person ages. Total time necessary, or that the body naturally wants to sleep, decreases with age. Time in regular sleep increases with age. Time in slow wave sleep decreases. Time in REM decreases, and time asleep while in bed decreases. So there's differences at different ages. And this is from jamesclear.com, who has an awesome book on habits. And if you go to his website, he has a lot of other tips that can help us build better habits to have better brain function, not that he thinks of it that way. Okay, so the sleep cycles can change with age. So when you're talking sleep recommendations with a particular client, keep that in mind. It might take them longer to fall asleep if they're older, and that the amount of time they're in each of those cycles might change. And this can be important if you have a client who's using a Fitbit. Fitbits will give an estimated calculation of each one of these, and so you can think about how to assess it. Because on average, it should take 15 to 20 minutes for a person to fall asleep. But we know that that can get longer as a person ages. But what I want you to take away from this slide is that if you get in bed and you just fall right asleep, people tell me all the time, I sleep great. I get in bed and I fall right asleep. That means you probably don't sleep great. And then they'll say, oh yeah, but then I wake up 3 hours later, and then a lot of times I can't get back to sleep. So what they mean is I fall asleep well, but it's actually not well. If you fall asleep well, it should take you 15 minutes or so lying in bed, having your brain slow down. And so for many of us in today's society, I know for me included, when I lay there, it feels strange because many times I'm used to just being exhausted and passing out, which is not a good thing. So you want to build a habit of laying in bed and relaxing and drifting off to sleep, because that's actually what's healthy for you. And that will help you move through those sleep cycles better, and you'll get a better night's sleep, which then when you wake up, that will have been restorative sleep, which will restore the cells in your body and will help you heal, and you'll be able to produce and have more fun the next day. That's the cycle of circadian rhythms. Okay, so some tips to be able to sleep better. We'll start here at 12 o'clock. Develop a ritual of going to sleep. This is totally a funny story that just happened 2 nights ago. My beautiful son, Seamus, who's 13, was trying to startle me as I went to get ready for bed. And he was hiding under the blankets in my bed while I brushed my teeth, I washed my face, I put some lotion on. My bedtime ritual, and we have it measured because I have a sleep number bed that measures how long you're in your bed and heart rate and breathing rate. But anyways, it measured that he was in the bed basically waiting for me for 23 minutes. And so while I was leisurely getting myself ready for bed, it was 23 minutes. And that's a ritual of going to sleep that I have. And my lights are low in my bedroom, and I'm bringing my brain down as I get ready for sleep. Let's move to number 1. What that always involves is me closing all my blinds so that I can get a good night's sleep in the dark. When you're in the dark, it helps your brain to be able to actually get slower. And in silence, I honestly, these days, I am never in silence because my kids are home all the time and they're teenagers and they feel like they're pouncing on my brain. But a couple nights when they're just up later than me these days, because I go to bed early, where I have bought earplugs, and some of those nights I will have to put earplugs in so that I can get a good night's sleep, because it's really important to me. Do not eat too much before going to bed. If you've had the experience of eating late and then your body has to process that food, and especially when you lay down, that's how people get gastric reflux and things like that. Do not smoke and do not use alcohol, and especially regularly, because if you are using alcohol regularly, you are tricking your brain into falling asleep. So anytime we put a substance in our system, we are regulating our system in one way or the other. So alcohol is a seeming depressant because it increases alpha in your brain as you're taking a drink, but it increases your heart rate significantly. So later on in the night, your heart rate will be faster. And my husband and I have joked on nights where we've gone out and had a couple drinks. The one night he joked that, and this is a long time ago, thankfully, but he joked that he was doing a light jog in his sleep because his heart rate is usually in the 57, 59 range. And because he had a couple drinks, his heart rate was 72, which is significantly higher than it normally is. So you have to keep the alcohol to a minimum. Take a walk before going to bed in the fresh air. Exercise throughout the day is proven to help you sleep better, and especially doing something leisurely in the evening that brings your brain down. So taking a walk in the fresh air. My family and I have a habit of, we sit on the front porch and my younger kids run around with our dogs. It's very lovely, and we're in the fresh air and we're just relaxing. Give up caffeine and energy drinks. Not drinking caffeine at all is excellent for the system because, again, if you put caffeine in, you're upregulating your nervous system in the morning, and especially if you drink coffee in the afternoon or later in the day. Sleep on a firm, level, and comfortable bed. Invest in a good bed. It's one of the best investments that you can make. And we have a Sleep Number bed. Like I told you, they're more of an investment, but I'm able to put my side at the comfort level that I like. My husband, who likes his bed firmer, he put his is 20 points more firmer than mine is. And we both get a good night's sleep every night. Favorable temperature for sleeping. Keep it cool. The cooler it is, the better your sleep will be. Go to bed and wake up at the same time. So I have from my bed, my Sleep Number bed. No, I don't get commissions from it. I just really like it. My phone and on my iWatch, it gives me a sleep reminder. Mine's 8:30 p.m. I know it's early, but I get up really early. So I like to be in bed. And again, if it reminds me at 8:30, then that's when I start to shut down whatever I'm doing and start my bedtime routine, which means I'm not usually in bed until 9:45 or so because I have to put the dogs out and get my kids situated and get ready and all that jazz. So if I don't start that routine till 10, I'm not in bed till 11, which is too late for me. So give yourself ample time and go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time every day. Do not have any electrical appliances near your head because it gives off electrical energy, which will disrupt your sleep. And in my course on screen time and what electronics does to you, and actually in my other courses too, I talk about being able to block the magnetic electrical energy that comes from appliances. Don't watch TV or play computer games before going to bed. Again, in my electronic screen time course, I talk about this a lot, but basically you need to give your brain time to come down, and electronics jack up your brain and make your brain go fast. So if you're watching a very exciting movie before bed, your brain is going to be running faster, and the screenshot changes in a movie like that alone will increase the energy in your brain. So give your brain time to come down. Don't play games right before bed. If you have insomnia, and I know this is hard and it seems easy, it's simple, but it's not easy, is that don't focus on your insomnia. So if it's difficult for you to sleep, then do a body scan and relax your body and try to think of how comfortable you are. Think of the comforts that you have instead of how you're still awake. And because if you wake up, or if you can't fall asleep and you're laying in bed thinking how you need to get some sleep or you're never going to feel good tomorrow, you will actually feel worse. So when you do a body scan and you relax into it, and I'm going to give you some tips on the next slide. When you relax into that, then you're able to work your way out of that insomnia and help your cause moving forward. Okay. Some sleep tips are, and I was just talking about the body scan, or you can count sheep, or you can, one I like the best is focusing on the in and out of your breath. Because if you're thinking to yourself, in, out, there's no room for other thoughts for your brain to catch onto and to speed up through this sleep cycle. So when you think in, out, your brain will shift back into sleep and will help your cause. Give yourself time to fall asleep. We already talked about this. For your brain to come down, you can use a weighted blanket. Weighted blankets have been proven to calm the nervous system, and the weight can help you feel secure and help you fall asleep. We already talked about electronics. And if you wake up in the night, don't check your phone. Try really hard not to check your phone because it will wake your brain up more and will make it more difficult for you to get back into the sleep cycles. Okay, for more information, visit my blog post at drtrishleigh.com. There's a search bar when you go to the blog, put in sleep. And there's a few different blog posts on sleep there. One is Sleep Better to Improve Anxiety. And I hope this helps you know how to help your clients better who have sleep issues. Look for that brain map, use the protocols that are suggested by science, and then look for progress in the trend screens. Give them those tips and help people sleep better so that we can change brains and improve lives. All right. Thank you.